Welcome to the segment where I review movies past and present, examining them from a variety of perspectives, including the subjective, psychological, and personal. Informative and occasionally funny, this is LoganLand Rants. Welcome to LoganLand Rants, and today we're talking about something I can imagine a lot of people to get riled up about, which is Star Wars. Yeah, I know. Now, truth be told, I think Star Wars fans are among the most toxic fans ever. They harass people who don't agree with them about a specific movie. They think they have good reasons, but I'm not going to indulge them here because they don't. And then they just act like they're victimized almost when someone doesn't agree with their exact dogmatic interpretation of said Star Wars films. I mean this in the intended sense. They get triggered by that. But with that in mind, I'm still going to wave into the shitstorm because that's just what I do on this podcast. I talk about movies, I give my honest opinion, etc., etc. And right now we're going to talk about it because as we speak, you're actually listening to two podcasts. Like, I recorded Rocket Jump earlier, and I will be recording this current podcast on The Last Jedi. Oh, did I say that? But basically, I'm doing a podcast on Star Wars this time, so keep that in mind. And if you're triggered, then just don't pledge to my Patreon. Really that simple. But anyway, we're talking about Star Wars, Rocket Jump, and I'm working on a Die Hard essay as we speak that'll come out next week. But these podcasts should come out about the same time because I missed a couple weeks ago, last week, and now I'm going to do two podcasts this week. So if you're listening to this, you're probably really confused, but that's the basic idea. Let's briefly go through my history with Star Wars. I was kind of spoiled the ending of Empire Strikes Back early on when I was getting into Star Wars. The first Star Wars film happened to be Phantom Menace, unfortunately, and it didn't make a lot of sense. And at the time, it was my favorite Star Wars movie, but only because I hadn't really seen any other Star Wars movie to comparison. Don't get too triggered by that. But then I started seeing more Star Wars films, and as I got older, my tastes changed a little bit. And I can accept that the original trilogy is much more extraordinary cinema. In fact, to this day, every time I rewatch The Empire Strikes Back, I put myself in the shoes of an audience member in 1980, trying to figure out, how would this twist affect them? The answer is quite a lot. The I Am Your Father reveal, potential spoiler alert, it's like a 30, 40-year-old movie. But I guess it is 40, hashtag 2020. But basically, I always try to put myself in the shoes of an audience member. Obviously, the climate was a little different back then. It was 1980. But it was an effective and unusual idea for a Star Wars movie to just like twist the knife like that and to end it on such a down note too. Like Han's in carbonite, Luke's hand is cut off, realizes Vader is his father, almost dies. It ends on a real down note. Something emphatically quoted by Clerks, which I already did a podcast about, so I won't talk too much about that here. But A New Hope was also one of my favorites, and still is, for a while. It's definitely a solid story, establishes a mythology, and from the beginning it kind of felt like there would be a lot of stories there, you know? It was such a deep world that George Lucas created. My little brother seems to think that George Lucas kept his crazy under lock just long enough for before the prequels. But I don't actually think that. I do think that Lucas definitely did have help on the original trilogy, and then he got all the credit, so then when he went to the prequels, they were all emphasis on ideas and backstory over actual stories. Something we'll get to a little later. But the thing about it is, the original trilogy is great. Return of the Jedi maybe a little less so, but I think that was also the beginning of Lucas's downfall. Lucas did not direct that movie. Richard Marquand did. Keep that in mind. But Lucas definitely had a great writing hand in produced it, obviously. Irvin Kershner directed Empire Strikes Back, and Lucas also gets full credit in New Hope as writer-director, despite the fact that he had a lot of help. So anyway, with that in mind, we're getting into the prequels. They're definitely impersonal, definitely bland by comparison to the, original trilogy, like they're mostly Hayden Christensen and other characters greenlit in the intended sense against ugly CGI, blue screen, green screen, whatever. I have a green screen. I should know this. But anyway, then we get to the sequels, which some people liked The Force Awakens, others didn't. They weren't necessarily mean about it. I mean, some people might have been mean about a black stormtrooper. Don't listen to that if you are mean about it. But then we introduce an Asian character in The Last Jedi, and people lose their minds because they're like, we hate Rose. For reasons, I guess. I'm not going to indulge their reasons here because they have no good reason. But the thing about The Last Jedi is a lot of people, including my dad, have called it a super woke story about injustices in the galaxy, and I wouldn't entirely disagree. Regardless of whether or not the movie is in any degree political, which, let's be real, it's a movie about space wizards intended for children, no one's going to take it as applicable to real-world politics. And actually, as we speak, someone's messing with my equipment. Not messing with my equipment. He's just getting something in the same room. Normally people don't do that. Anyway. Star Wars The Last Jedi, regardless of how political it was or wasn't, it was an effective story. It told a real story. It wasn't a bad movie. I think all of you goddamn idiots who think that it ruined Star Wars are on crack. Pardon my language. But if you get triggered again, please just leave me out of it. I'm not in the mood to get doxxed again. Now The Rise of Skywalker. This is where it kind of reverted to it kind of quote-unquote solved the problems of The Last Jedi, as if there were any problems to solve. I don't know. In my opinion, Abrams just kind of catered to the worst aspects of Star Wars fans. There was a potential for a good story there, and there were some genuinely incredible moments, testament to Abrams' actually pretty solid technical mastery. But at a certain point, it just did a bunch of things that weren't really necessary. And by the time the Rey Skywalker reveal came, I was overwhelmingly annoyed and confused. That's not really the reaction you want. I mean, I do give the movie props to affecting me in that way. But it was also pretty bland, and other than the visual representation, the millennial banter was stupid. Oh man, I can expect people getting spicy emails about that. Anyway, personal favorite in order. That's a good question. Empire and A New Hope tied for first. Return of the Jedi. Well, no. I think Last Jedi and Return of the Jedi would be tied, honestly. I think Last Jedi is a better movie, controversial opinion. But Return of the Jedi still has a place. Then we got, I think Solo or Rogue One are tied also. The anthology movies are tied, of course. Actually, Force Awakens before the anthology series. So Empire, New Hope, Last Jedi, Return of the Jedi, Force Awakens, And you don't have to hear me go in order. But anyway, least favorite is probably Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones. Like, I thought they had the blandest dialogue. And Revenge of the Sith, while dark, it still had problems. Like, I'm not going to lie, it had weird tonal shifts that weren't really necessary. But I'm going to stop talking right now because I don't want people to either stop listening or just send me hate mail or something like that. I don't think it'll happen, but who knows. Anyway, this has been LoganLand Rants, an especially hot take episode, and I will see you next week with a new podcast, definitely. That's all. Bye.